Welcome to the Rise Method podcast, where we make fitness information available to everyone. I'm Steve. Let's jump in.
What's up, guys? Coach Steve here, and welcome back to another episode of the Rise Method podcast. Today's episode is a special one. Like always, we are in week 9 of the BTC, our Body Transformation Challenge, and we're in the final phase of the transformation. So the last 4 weeks where we could really see some magic starting to happen. We've set up 8 weeks now of habits, routines, changing our environments, putting the work in, and now is the last 4 weeks to really start to see some really great results come through. So if you're at that point right now where you're spinning the wheels and you're kind of going through the motions and you're thinking, oh geez, it's really tough, it's really hard, it's okay, push through those last couple of weeks, and I guarantee that putting in the effort of the last 4 weeks will result in some just amazing outcomes. So keep pushing through. We're getting lots of questions about our next BTC, BTC the second, which will be starting on the 10th of June, which is King's birthday. So it's going to be on the 10th of June. It's going to be a 12-week challenge. You'll be getting loads of information about that there. So if you haven't already, make sure you join our Facebook social hub. So that's the Rise Method Facebook social hub for more information, where we'll be directly providing some information there, as well as our emails. So if you haven't already, go check out our email newsletter. It's really cool. Every Monday you'll get an email from me about really fun things related to fitness, training, health, everything in between. I want to start today's podcast by telling you a quick story about one of my first clients. My first clients 10 years ago, where junior Coach Steve was on the gym floor, and this woman came up to me, asked me about personal training, and her name was Sally. Now, Sally was in her 50s at the time, 10 years ago now. She was quite short, very lean, quite small, and she wanted to get started with personal training because she wanted to get stronger. So she had always done things like cardio training, or just walking and walking the dogs and playing with the kids, that type of thing. And she wanted to get stronger in the gym so that she could play with her grandkids. And she had one big goal where she wanted to pick up one of her grandkids up over her head. And her grandkid was, I think, 3 or 4 at the time. So we're looking at 15, 20 kilos or so, and she wanted to pick that child up over her head. Now, the problem that Sally faced was that she was scared of lifting weights. So because she was quite small and petite, and in her 50s, she just believed that, it was a really dangerous thing to do. She needed to have lots of observation, very particular and specific technique, because if she didn't, she would get hurt. And that's not the case, right? We know that our body adapts to the stimuluses that we apply to it. So if you have gone from doing no exercise to some exercise, then a lot of exercise really quickly, you are at a higher risk of having an injury occur, because we're doing too much too quickly after too little, doing too little for too long, okay? But for Sally, she had been doing lots of exercise. She was ready to train, and she was ready to lift some weight. So when she got started with me, we started with a simple exercise, a dumbbell chest press. So I asked her, I'm like, Sally, go grab a set of dumbbells. And she went over and grabbed the 2 kilo dumbbells. And I looked at her and I said, Sally, come on. And I'm like, your handbag probably weighs more than those 2 kilo dumbbells. Let's go a little bit further. So she then grabbed the 5 kilo dumbbells. I looked at her, I'm like, come on. We then started with the 10 kilo dumbbells. So start off with 10 kilo dumbbells with chest press, a little bit of pep talk from junior Coach Steve, and she smashed it. She smashed it out of the park, made it look easy, 10 kilo dumbbell chest presses, like she'd been doing them forever. Okay, so she started off with this belief that, she was fragile, she was petite, this is something that she doesn't do, and, it's scary, okay? And what we learned very quickly was that she was strong. And if you're in a position now where you're going to the gym and you're grabbing the 1 kilo, 2 kilo dumbbells, you might be lifting way more than that when you're just taking the groceries from the car to your house, or doing the washing, or cleaning up the dishes, or playing with your kids, or whatever you're doing for day-to-day lives. You're probably adding more load onto your body doing those activities than what you're doing in the gym. So don't be afraid of adding some load, and for most of us, we are much stronger than we think. Now, the most amazing thing that Sally taught me was, after training with her for a few months, we transitioned from dumbbells into barbells. We started doing some bigger lifts, squats, deadlifts, bench press. She came up to me one day and she goes, Steve, I quit my job today. It caught me off guard. I'm like, whoa, geez, okay. And Sally had been talking to me about her job. She worked in administration and admin kind of reception role. She'd been doing that for years. And she just had enough of it. She wanted to do something bigger than herself. And she quit her job and she started a small little cupcake business. And what was really amazing about this was that Sally told me she always wanted to do this. She always wanted to have her own business. She always wanted to start something small that was her own, but she never had the confidence or the ambition to go and do something. She was like, it's not for me. It's not something that I do. And this language was mirrored in her approach to fitness. Something I don't do. It's not something that I've done before, or someone like me that doesn't do that. And when she was in the gym and she broke those beliefs, where she started grabbing heavier dumbbells, she started doing barbell training and strong lifts, and she eventually picked up her grandchild over her head, and she sent me a photo. That was really beautiful. And what was amazing to hear from her was that change in belief of what strength training gave her. I'm not someone who does this. Now I'm someone who did this, transitioned over into her day-to-day life. It transitioned over into her career, something that she wanted to do for a really long time. And strength training gave her that. So if you're sitting there thinking, I'm mainly focused on weight loss. I mainly want to just do running or just mainly diet my way there. Break those beliefs. Move into something like strength training. Build some muscle. Move into something where you think that you someone who doesn't do that, and you might find there's some changes that happen in your life, such as I quit my job, I want to start something exciting, or maybe I exit a relationship, or move houses, move locations, change my environment. You can make these really big overhauls into your life because you previously thought, hey, this is something that I don't do. Now you showed yourself that I do that, and you transition and use the same framework into something new. So interesting story about Sally. Taught me a lesson about strength training that I wasn't ready to learn. It was a good 10 or so years ago now. So I hope Sally's doing well. I should check up on her. But use fitness for more than just what it is. Sure, we're building our body, we're building our health and our strength. But when we build the mindset of someone who goes to the gym, where we're constantly challenging and pushing our barriers and our limits so that we can grow, all these skills are applied into every aspect of our life. So team, I want to jump into 3 questions that we have today. So the first question here is about calories. And the question was, when calculating calories for weight loss, should you use your current body weight or your goal body weight? Okay, so should you use your current or your goal? So let's say you are 100 kilos right now and your goal is 90 kilos, you want to lose 10 kilos, should you calculate your body weight using the 90 kilo number or the 100 kilos, so your current or your goal? Okay. Now, firstly, we need to talk about goal body weights. So goal body weights are just an abstract number just plucked out of the sky. So you might be 100 kilos now and you go, hey, I want to be 90 because it's a round number. It looks nice. Or you might have a fixed meaning towards that. So you go, hey, I want to be 90 kilos because that's how much I weighed when I was a teenager or in high school, or when I was at uni and playing rugby or doing gymnastics or swimming, whatever it was. That's how much I weighed, so that's how much I should weigh now. And the fact that we need to remember is that you're a different person now. So using a abstract number like 90 kilos just plucked out of the sky, might not be helpful information. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to appreciate. Now, if our goal was 90 kilos, okay, sure, no, that's fine. That's your goal, no issues. Who am I to say anything different? When we're working out our calories for weight loss, it should be on our current calories, and it should be on our current body weight. And here's the deal. Your body weight doesn't actually change your calorie goal that much, and it shouldn't. So when we're looking at something like prescribing calories for weight loss, firstly, that number isn't static. It's a dynamic and moving number. So the easiest way and simplest way to work out calories for weight loss is to just multiply your body weight by 25 and start there. Okay. Then what you need to do is to establish a baseline of physical activity. So you want to be doing 10,000 steps a day. You want to be going to the gym at least twice a week. You want to be hitting that target calories, probably within 10%. So you can't just say, hey, I'm on 2,000 calories, and then it doesn't matter on the weekends and at night because I'm not really tracking those. So we want to be within that target goal, of course. And then finally, we need to measure our body weight and our body weight changes. And there's no point measuring our body weight, once a week or once a month. We want to be in a position where we are measuring our body weight daily and working out a weekly average, then comparing those weekly averages to each other. So once we determine our starting calories, a static number, then we apply some sort of way to uniform that intervention. So we make it sustainable and applicable. Then we need to measure the changes it has on our body weight. So let's use an example of you're 100 kilos right now. You've multiplied your body weight by 25. That's 2,500 calories. You applied that calorie intake every day. Probably within 10% is a rough goal. You've done 10,000 steps a day, plus you've gone to the gym, twice a week, plus you measure your body weight every single day. You've plotted it on a nice graph and you can start seeing trends. I want you to do that for 14 days, so 2 weeks. Maintain that for 2 weeks, then see the effects it has on your body weight. So we want to be either seeing a general gentle decrease down, or maybe it's staying quite flat. But if you're not seeing any changes in your body weight, then just decrease your calories by 10%. So the caloric goal shouldn't be just a number that is off one calculation and static forever. We want to make it dynamic, so it might change over time. Now, when we look at, let's say, our target body weight, 90 kilos versus 100 kilos, if we times that by 25, the difference is only 250 calories, right? So a very small percentage, that might be 10%. So we might end up to a point where we are consuming our target calorie number on a simple formula of 25 times your body weight, which can get messy when you use other formulas such as the Joris-St. Mifflin equation, where we start to factor in activity level and such. So they're more complicated formulas, but it doesn't matter what formula you use. It's more of a starting point. You start at just a number, you consume those calories, you maintain everything else like your step counts, and going to the gym and these other factors. Then we want to track that against our body weight changes. Okay. It's kind of like, you want to save up to buy a house and you need X number of dollars to put down a deposit. Let's say $100,000 you need to save up. Your goal might be to save $1,000 a week, but things pop up from week to week. You have to get new shoes because you got a hole in your shoes. Your car broke down, you need to fix that. You are spending a little bit more in fuel in this particular week, or your electricity bill goes up, whatever it is. So your expenses slightly change. Then your income might change as well. Maybe you get a bonus on a particular week, or you find $5 on the floor, or your you sell your crypto and you have more income now. So whatever it is, those two factors can change over time. So it's not a static number of saying I'm saving $1,000 a week. That number can kind of fluctuate, and it might need to dynamically change. And that's the same thing when it comes to weight loss. So we need to measure something, let's say our body weight, and we need to assess our strategy over time and compare those two. So, back to our house analogy, if you keep looking at your bank account and that bank balance isn't going up, you might have to review things and go, well, okay, I need to find a way to make more money or decrease my expenses so that my bank balance can continue to go up. So there's no point in trying to look at online calculators or how much should I be spending a week on average based on my demographics, because those numbers are meaningless. So it's all about a starting point, saying, hey, this might be a good starting point for your calories. Consume that number, measure the effects it has on your body weight, and then make tweaks and tailor it over time. Okay. Next question here is about weight loss and the difference between cutting and bulking, okay, or gaining and losing weight, okay. Now, this individual goes and says a similar problem where, hey, I have a goal body weight of X number. So we won't kind of touch on that idea because there's a similar idea where, your goal number, where's the meaning behind it, right? Is it because you weighed that much when you were X time in your life? That's beside the point. So this individual has been dieting for 9 months now, and has a goal to transition from losing weight to building some muscle. So they want to know, is it better to switch to a small surplus and build for a few months and then kind of cut again, or should they transition to maintenance? And is it better to continue dieting, or is it better to... So the question basically is like, do I keep cutting until I get to my target weight? So that means that I'm dieting for 9 months total, or do I have a mid-weight maintenance phase, or do I transition into a building phase straight after? So let's just break it down here, team. So firstly, when we are dieting, in a definition of dieting, we want to be losing 0.5 to 1% of our body weight per week. Okay, so that would be dieting. Now, if you're not losing that, then you're not necessarily in a diet. Now, what tends to happen is if we're dieting for a prolonged period of time, we go through phases where we kind of dip out of that 0.5 to 1% of weight loss per week. So you might be dieting for, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4 months, and then you still think you are dieting, you're doing all the dieting things, but you're not losing weight anymore. So that's kind of like we tap into this maintenance phase without directly working towards a maintenance phase. So when we say things like, oh, I'm dieting for 9 months, there's a question mark that comes up and goes, well, are you actually dieting for 9 months? Or are you going through the process of dieting for 9 months, but then we're having these little micro breaks of, a week or two where we're not losing weight. We're technically not on a diet. It's a bit more of a break period. And that can happen just ad hoc, or a bit of adaptation where some particular weeks you get tired, you don't go to the gym because you're just feeling a bit sore, a bit beat up. Maybe your step count slightly decreases. As an example, your metabolism slightly changes, or you might have a period where you have slightly increased calorie intake, and this is just life. So that's the first thing to consider. So we want to make sure that we are losing 0.5 to 1% of our body weight per week. Now, within a dieting phase, we don't want to be dieting for more than 12 weeks or so. On the lower end, we don't want to be dieting for less than 4 weeks because it's just too small to notice any significant changes. And then if we're dieting, that 12 to even like 16 weeks, we start to have side effects of some adaptation where our training intensity slowly decreases, our metabolism can slightly change, we have higher risks of binge eating episodes, mood swings, extreme fatigue, and these types of things. So it's wise after like a 3-month period to transition into a slight maintenance phase. And you might do this naturally where, again, you are doing fewer steps or eating slightly more calories, or you're just not as motivated to go to the gym. So you're having a very slight break in there, but we either do that intentionally or unintentionally there. So that's what we might do on paper. So it's either a 12-week period, or if we've lost 10% of our body weight. So if you are losing a higher end of that 0.5 to 1% of our body weight, let's say 1% a week, we're getting out to like 10 weeks, 10% of our body weight, then you probably need just a slight little pit stop break. So then before we transition into that next phase. Now, how long is that maintenance phase? Well, on paper, it works well if it's about 50% of the length of the diet phase. So if you are dieting for 12 weeks, we want to be doing a maintenance phase where we are just maintaining our body weight for at least 6 weeks. So it's kind of like a little bit of pit stop, a little bit of a rest time, and allowing our body to adapt to that new body weight. And then we might re-enter a diet. And not only just adaptation, but it gives us a little bit of a break from the fatigue that comes with dieting. And again, that definition of dieting, losing 0.5 to 1% of our body weight per week. Now, if you wanted to transition into a building phase, you can certainly shift from that cutting phase directly into a building phase. There is a higher risk of more body fat being stored in that window of time as you develop, as you adapt. So a bit of a phasic approach might be better. So if you are in a true dieting phase, it might be better to kind of step up into maintenance for a couple of weeks and step up into a build phase and transition that way. Now, again, when we're looking at building phases, we're kind of around this 4 to 6 weeks of a minimum of a building phase before we see any actual adaptations. So minimum 4 to 6 weeks. And then on the higher end of a building phase, we're kind of looking at that 18 weeks or 20 weeks or so. Because if we are in a prolonged building phase, we are at a high risk of just gaining lots of body fat. So what we'd like to do is kind of transition into a building phase and then transition into that cutting phase and kind of cycle between the two, maybe with a little bit of a pit stop in between maintenance. Now, this is all really nice in theory and on paper. In practice, it takes a lot of hard work, constantly tracking our calories and constantly tracking our body weight and how it all works. So in a simpler way of looking at it, if we're dieting down for a period of time, let's say 12 weeks, we reach our end goal, we might get to a point where we're just trying to maintain our body weight, just eating ad hoc and trying to enjoy that maintenance phase. Then we might go through a focused building phase where we're trying to purposely gain a little bit of body weight or enjoy the extra energy that comes from that food so that we can hopefully build some of that muscle. Now, all of this compounded, we need to test the effects that it has on our training, because if we're dieting for long periods of time, we can see decreases in training performance. And if we're gaining for long periods of time, we can also see some slight changes in our performance as we start getting heavier. Our cardio goes out the window, and we can see some decreases in range of motion if we start putting on some mass or some body fat as well. So we often, most of us transition through small periods of time where we might gain some weight until we're feeling uncomfortable in our body, and then we kind of lose that weight again and then gain some weight until we're feeling uncomfortable in our body, then lose some weight. And long-term development of building muscle, this can certainly work, but it takes a different mindset to transition into that building style of training, because it's a bit of an offset, and when we think about it, we're all adults and we've all done things in the short term that is net negative for a net positive to occur. And that could be, I'm staying late at work so that I can finish a project so that I can get a promotion or something, right? So that's a net negative where you might be working without being paid or working overtime or whatever it is, so that we can, in a long period of time, get a promotion. Or maybe you go to uni for 3 years and you do a master's for a couple of years. All that time you're not earning income and you're not in your career space or whatever it is. Then you can step into a job and do those things. So there's a short window of time where we invest for the long term. And it's the same when it comes to building muscle. There might be a short window of time, 3 months or so, each year or so, where we're investing in building some muscle so that we can develop our physique in the long term. Okay. Final question here is about tearing calves. It's about calves. So the question is that my partner's footy team has just announced that they're going to have a women's team next year. Definitely not fit enough to be playing, especially. So the question is, I'm definitely not fit enough yet, but have nearly a year to get fitter, specifically that I have, which is definitely achievable. So this person has played footy in the past. They've got a year to get fit to play footy again. The issue that they have is that they are worried that they're going to tear their calves. So they've torn their calves in the past, and they're terrified of running and jumping, which is a direct activity that's involved in footy. Okay, problem number one. And do you have any advice on how to build up to be able to run and jump again, hopefully without tearing my calf? Okay, so let's break it down. Individual wants to play footy. They played in the past, kept tearing their calf, and they're really scared of running and jumping. What do they do to reduce the risk of a calf tear again? So first thing we need to appreciate is that you can't necessarily prevent a calf tear. It may happen, okay, but we might be able to reduce the risk of an injury occurring. Now, injuries occur because we do too much too soon after doing too little for too long, okay? So if this individual hasn't run, hasn't jumped in years, going from 0 to lots jumping is doing a lot in a short period of time. So our body tissues are just not ready for that load, and there's a higher risk of an injury occurring. Okay, it's just like, right now you might be sitting on a chair. I'm sitting on a chair, and that chair has a capacity of load. So it might be your body weight, it might be 2 people's body weights, it might be 100 people's body weights, but after a certain load, it's going to break. Okay, and it's the same as our muscles and our tendons and our bones. After a certain amount of load, those tissues are going to experience traumatic event, and tear or sprain or whatever it happens. Okay. So when we look at something like running and jumping, we need to appreciate that running has almost 9 times our body weight going through each limb. Okay, so let's say me, about 100 kilos. If I'm running, that's almost a ton of force going through my calf, through my Achilles tendon, through my knee, through my hip with each run. So it's a lot of force going through those tissues. And in one way, this is actually really exciting because, hey, if you are running or doing, short bursts of activity, hey, that's almost like a ton of force if you're about 100 kilos. Walking is a bit lower, about 4 times our body weight. So even still, if you're about 100 kilos, you're currently walking, it's 400 kilos of force. And if you're scared of the leg press and that has 100 kilos, geez, you can handle a lot of load, right? So this is an exciting thing. But the other side of it, we need to appreciate that, hey, if you're doing a lot really quickly, it's just a higher risk of injury occurring. Now, the next problem we face is that mentally and cardiovascularly, we are probably ready to do lots of running and jumping, right? So after a short window, let's say 1, 2, 3 training sessions, you might be feeling fit enough to be like, hey, I can go and run for longer and jump for longer, right? But our body's tissues haven't adapted to that yet. So how are we going to navigate this space to get us ready for running and jumping? Firstly, we need to slowly ramp up the volume of activity going through our calves. So that could be things like doing more calf raises than you currently are, maybe doing more walking, getting more distance under your feet, so doing more walking, so that's a calf-based activity, and even introducing things like some slight speed walking or even some fartlek training where you are maybe running for short periods of time and then walking. We want to ease ourselves into running activities where we are doing maybe shorter bursts than we expect. So you might be feeling, hey, I'm going to go for a run for a 2Ks around the block. Okay, how about we just run for half the distance and walk the rest? So we just slowly and intelligently introduce this high impact activity, especially if you're fearful of a calf tear again, and you've got a history of calf tears, because the number one risk factor for an injury is previous injury. So if you have had your calf torn in the past, you are at a high risk of that happening again. Same as if you have injured your shoulder or your back or your hip in the past, that is a higher incidence of occurring. The next thing we can appreciate is, why do the calves keep tearing? Now, in the clinic, I've seen lots of folks with really tight calves that leads to calf and ankle problems. And when we assess these individuals, we often find that there's a very deconditioned glute involved. So when we look at walking, right, we are going through a motion of hip extension where we're bringing the leg behind us, because that's how we propel ourselves forward. And then if the glute is not doing glute things, then the calf goes, hey man, don't worry, I've got this. And the calf will do more of what we call plantar flexion to kind of propel us forwards. So you might be in a position where the glutes are not in a great space to contract. That could be because of a decrease in hip mobility. So what a common occurrence happens with these folks who have tight calves is that they lose their ability to inwardly rotate, internal rotation at their hip, so that the glute isn't in a great position to contract when they're walking, and then their calves work harder. So you might be finding that when you're running and jumping, you're doing lots of calf work, more than what I would do when I'm doing the same activities. So your calves are not only doing normal calf jobs, they're also doing jobs of the hips. So there's no wonder that there's just lots of load piling on the calves, which leads to a tear occurring. So some things you could do right now to improve your ability for your glutes to kind of contract when you're walking is one is just to be conscious of it. So when you are walking, really try to do a conscious squeeze of the glute when you're walking, right? And try to use your glutes to propel yourself forward. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if you know that you have, quote, tight hips and it feels stiff in your hips, work on some hip mobility, and that could be 90-90 rotational work on the hips, specifically into hip internal rotation. Third, there are some activation work you could do. One of my favorite is this really dumb thing that my mum and I used to do in the car, where we would be listening to music and she would turn to me, she goes, Steve, well, she doesn't call me Steve, she goes, yo Baba, do the bum dance. And the bum dance is when you're sitting there, you're just squeezing each butt cheek to the time of the music. So if you're sitting in the car and you are listening to a beat, like a bass or a drum or something like that, anything with a little bit of a beats per minute, try to squeeze your butt cheeks to the time of the music. And you could do maybe individual, like right, left, or maybe both at the same time, or both, and try to hold it and let go. And just that little bit of priming work may help you to use your glutes more when you're doing activities of daily living, which eases the load away from the calves, so the calves can kind of heal a little bit more in between bouts of training. Okay, so we've got doing more calf raises, we've got slowly increasing the hip mobility, doing things like the bum dance, and then we're slowly adding on these running activities, maybe starting off at a lower level and building ourselves up. I spoke to this individual about skipping. They wanted to start skipping, thought that would be a good idea. And yeah, that's great. You know, we're working on our calves, we're doing things like jumping, but we face the same problem where you might be wanting to skip for a prolonged time. Like, hey, I could skip for, 5 minutes at a time. But that's a lot of skipping. So maybe it's better to start at a lower end, maybe a minute at a time, and then work our way up over time. How do we know if we're doing too much? Well, this is a self-assessment that you can do. So immediately, during, and then immediately after, and then in the 24 hours after, so 3 times, you can rate your pain or discomfort that you're feeling in those tissues on a scale of 1 to 10. So if that pain is greater than a 5 out of 10, then you're probably doing too much too soon. Okay, so if you're doing skipping or running and that pain is, a 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, hey, this is what we should expect when we're training, a bit of discomfort, a bit of pain. But if that pain slowly climbs up and you're like, hey, yeah, no, this is getting like above a 5, maybe a 6, 7, 8, this is a 9 out of 10 pain, this is quite painful, then you're probably doing too much. And we can measure it 3 ways. So 1, when we are doing the activity. 2, immediately after. So you've done skipping for a minute, you're skipping for a minute, hey, this is fine, you put the skipping rope down, and you go, oh yeah, actually, this hurts. Okay, that's immediately after. And then in the 24 hours afterwards, so let's say the next day you wake up and the pain is really intense in your calves, greater than a 5 out of 10, because you'll have some DOMs, it'll be like a 2 or 3 out of 10 in discomfort. And that's to be expected if we're working on our calves again. But if it's really high, an 8, 9, 10 out of 10 pain, too much too soon. So we then reflect back on our training. We go, hey, you did 60 seconds of calf raises. Let's reduce that. Let's go maybe 30 seconds of calf raises, retest and build ourselves up. Now, again, this is all just an intelligent way, a strategic way, a bit of a method, a framework so that you can get back into these activities. You might be fine just jumping straight back in, away you go. But if the fear is that, hey, I might strain my calf again, then it's wise to take a little bit of a layered approach. But there you go, team. Let's wrap it up there for this episode of the Rise Method podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know, and I'll catch you in the next one.